Well, tonight on the Levellled Ground with me on the set is none other than the Program Officer of Africa, Disability Human Rights.
Yes.
Well, thanks, Mehdi, for joining me on this special interactive news segment where we discuss issues that affect the people.
Thank you, too, for the
Now,
invitation.
I understand that today you have presented a petition to the Office of the Speaker. What is this petition all about?
We're trying to respond to the bill which came from the cabinet, and we thought it does not actually meet the standards of what we need as people with disabilities. This bill is seeking to amend the Persons with Disability Act of 2006. But then initially in the 2006 bill, the main contentions were that actually it never met standards that were required of a good law, including being able to actually spell out who is responsible to implement the respective provisions in the bill.
You're talking about standards of a good law.
Yes.
Would you please try to elaborate what standards are you talking about that you really needed in that law?
For example, the bill that Cabinet presented does not make any financial commitments as well. It does not, it is very shallow in scope. Actually, it's so shallow compared even to the law that it seeks to replace. It doesn't, for example, talk about key salient issues like, for example, a disability fund, where we would need that fund, for example, would help us find access, wheelchairs, find hearing aids, find, for example, walking sticks, things that are accessories to people with disabilities but are so urgent and needed. The bill, for example, forgets to speak about there's this new component which we call reasonable accommodation, and it's coming from the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, which Uganda has signed to. And this principle means that at least you should create an environment that enables me to benefit on an equal basis with others.
So now, what do you need to be addressed in what you intend to move on the floor of Parliament?
So what we need Parliament to address is to have the lived experience in practice. They should legislate bearing in mind our needs as opposed to them thinking about the financial implications. They should legislate, or they should come up with a bill that responds to the challenges in the field of education, challenge, for example, accessing classrooms, basic things like accessing toilets in schools, basic challenges like accessing employment, basic challenges, for example, to do with basic health care. People have been talking about beds which are not accessible to us, testing centers, for example. You go for an HIV test and then you're tested in a corridor, like it happened to me one time. You wait for your results. So we wanted the bill to have the law that has that feel.
How have you managed to address the issue of HIV/AIDS with people living with disabilities? Because we do understand that I believe that should be a big challenge to you guys.
Of course, it's a challenge. Like I told you, I did my first HIV test in a corridor of a hospital because the lab had a very small entrance and I could not go in. I at one point did a urine test in one of the wards, not a toilet, not a bathroom, because the doors are very small. So that discourages you from going back to test again. I got my results in an envelope. They told me to wait for the next doctor and move in with my results to tell me whether I'm positive or negative. So those are the simple things that we think the legislators should actually look into before they come up with the legislation, only bearing in mind the cost implications. Of course, there are other factors incidental to that. We are about 6 million people, as per the recent census. People with disabilities are voters, but they are also taxpayers. But also for me, the biggest tenet in this is that they should look at creating a legislation that should empower people to live independent, give them the best quality education. For example, I was trained as a lawyer. I work independently. I earn money. So I don't need actually to receive health care necessarily from government because I can be able to afford that.
Do you think that this government is taking some of your issues that you have put on table very seriously?
I think to some extent, yes, but to a large extent, I don't think so. Because the responses we seem to get are always coming. They're always coming back and forth with the same issues. We try to make proposals, but then I don't seem to see meaningful reactions to each of the points that are being proposed. The only reaction that comes out is that, oh, this is going to be very expensive to implement.
Well, the other thing is that because now we are having a mixture of two acts.
Yes.
We have the one of 2006, and we are also having the one of 2014,
Yes.
so to speak. What's wrong with the recent one of 2014?
What is wrong with the 2014 bill, which is not yet an act, is the fact that, one, it takes away the protections that were given to us in 2006. For example, most of the commitments, let's say around education, around employment, which already exist in the 2006 law, are taken away. But also the most salient issue is that now they've narrowed it into what they call a discrimination law. So it's only trying to protect people with disabilities against discrimination. But if you look at the Constitution of Uganda, discrimination is just one article. But we also enjoy all the other rights to education, to employment, to privacy, to access justice. So if it passes the way it is, then your responsibility will be not to discriminate people with disabilities, and all that is done.
I would like to know from you, has it insulated that area of discrimination?
I still think there are a number of things that are lacking. For example, I hinted on that technical word called reasonable accommodation, which means, for example, if you're hiring me, then you should make arrangements. For example, if I need a support person, for me to have a support person in the work premises. If you're hiring me and you have a building like this and you have a bathroom, you should make arrangements that I should be able to access the bathroom as well. That is an element. But then when you look at the kind of discrimination that is described in the current bill, it also still misses out on those key tenets, which actually would make different legal provisions disability friendly or disability related.
Are you still being seriously discriminated, let me say, in terms of job opportunities?
Of course, when you look at, for example, education, I can speak to that. Recently, last year, UNICEF produced a report which indicates that we have about 2.5 million children who have disabilities, but about 9% of those are in school. So that would be about 1,000 out of 2.5 million children. We all remember we have universal primary education. But even with that, and then the special priority which is seemingly provided to children with disabilities, it is just 9%. And then when you look at figures at O level, how many get to O level? They come down to 4%. How many graduate? Probably it could be 1%. So that means probably out of the 2.5 million children we have who have disabilities now, 10, 20 years from now when they graduate, we might have about 2. That is significantly so low.
But there is a Ministry of Gender where you fall.
Yes.
Do you have a special desk there to attend to issues of PWDs?
I think the underlying challenge within the ministry, including the National Council for Disability, which is also a government organ, is I think limitations in funding. They have a lot of work. They are serving over probably 6 million people in this country, but then their budgets are usually so constrained. The National Council has to monitor all other organs, all the work that is going on in Uganda to find out whether or not it's compliant to, or it's serving people with disabilities, but are they well funded?
Thanks, Mehdi, for joining me on this special interactive news segment, the Levellled Ground, where host people of sound mind like you. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you too. Thank you.
All right.